The high school hockey season starts later this month. God, that's crazy to think about. But practices can officially begin, I believe, October 27th. So, with the opening week incoming, I start in on my 25-26 conference previews. That's right. I go one by one through all 13 conferences, leagues, and associations around the state, talking about off-season changes, players to watch, and predictions for who I think wins each of those conferences and leagues. We start things off this week with a deep dive into the Mid-Michigan Hockey Conference, the South Central Hockey League, and the Lakes Valley Conference. So hit the subscribe button if you're watching here on YouTube, and let's talk some hockey, shall we? We will start the conversation off, like I said, with the Mid-Michigan Conference here. And maybe a group of teams that doesn't garner a ton of statewide recognition, considering that like Gladwin was the highest ranked team in the conference according to my hockey rankings, and they finished at 64th in the state last season. But the Flying G's were third in the state last season in total offense with 146 goals in 25 games. That was second to only Jeffers, who had 153, and Lakeshore, who led the state with 184 goals last season. That comes out to almost 6 goals per game, believe it or not. And the kicker about all this is that the Gladwin could see as many as 16 skaters return from last season's squad. That spells bad news for the rest of the Mid-Michigan Conference, I think. I highlighted Gladwin forwards Braden Guzman and Clayton Newman as 2 forwards to watch ahead of the 25-26 season. You can check that out on the blog that I linked in the description below, or you can follow me on Instagram where I posted complete Mid-Michigan Conference standings projections along with players to watch in the conference there. So be sure to follow me on Instagram and stay up to date on all things there as well. But the G-men are going to be much more than just those top 2 scorers that I mentioned. You also got Jeff Zeitz, who scored 17 goals and 30 points last season. Parker Woods reached the 20-point plateau as a freshman. Preston Willert in net, who appeared in all 25 games last season as a junior, should return for a 3rd season in net. Gladwin won 19 games last season, and with the returners coming back and the strength of schedule, it was a bottom 25 in the state last year in terms of strength of schedule. And as a coach, obviously, I'd like to see that improve year over year, but even if it does get a little more challenging, this is a Gladwin group that I expect to win a lot of games yet again this winter. So there's one team I think in the conference that could provide some resistance, and that's the second-year co-op of Tri-Valley. They're going to be young. Talking with Coach Paul Engelbart's mentioned as much too that they're going to be a young bunch and actually lean on sophomores like Beckett Pruden and Connor Wilcox could be called upon heavily for offensive production, which kind of sets the stage a little bit for a sink or swim approach. And can the kids answer the call and step up to a challenge like that? But even aside from that, defensively, I expect this to be a strong group. The Thunder graduated a pair of goalies, so that leaves a bit of question marks and holes to fill in that end of the rink. But when you've got juniors like Max Miller and Jake Rao who have played almost 50 games apiece at the varsity level, that is a constant and a real luxury on the back end that you can lean on as you're kind of working through some growing pains in net, as you're looking to develop and find that scoring touch up front. With those 2 pillars in your defensive unit, I think that bodes well for you. I got to see Rao this fall with MHA, and he's on their top 18U team playing against AAA competition. Rao's a guy that comes from a AAA background. playing for Little Caesars. But I've seen him now for 3 years with MHA in the fall program, and he's really starting to round out into a complete high school defenseman. His footwork won't blow you away, and he doesn't necessarily show off flashy hands or anything like that, but he's capable of a little bit of everything, which I like to see. A very well-rounded, versatile guy. He's reliable, good for that 6 to 8 foot pass type of guy, getting out of the zone defensively. Good gap control off the rush, and like I said, just positioning all around and doing that at the 18U AAA level. He'll have the ability to really crank it up, I think, and take over high school hockey games at this level in the Mid-Michigan Conference. And I'm not sure anyone else in this conference can match his skill set and ability. So, you get to pair him with a guy like Max Miller, who actually outproduced Rao last season with 10 goals and 32 points. And you've got a really solid pair that could, probably skate with just about anybody in the state. And I don't bring up the points thing to kind of, pit one another against each other or make it about points, just illustrating the fact that as good as Rao is, he's got a counterpart in that defensive unit who's just as capable of producing and making plays. So now in this environment, again, kind of thinking back as a coach, if I've got these two, I'm probably not skating them together on the same pair unless I've got a really deep defensive group behind them. I'd probably split them up and go like my 1 and 4 and my 2 and 3 or something like that on the back end. And then that way I can have one of them on the ice at all times, especially in more difficult or challenging matchups. You always want at least one of those guys on the ice. But, while they're a young group and breaking in new goalies, I do think because of their strength on the back end, that Tri-Valley, who actually beat Gladwin twice last season, could pose a threat to beat the Flying G's again this season and really contend and push for which would be a back-to-back titles in the Mid-Michigan Hockey Conference if Tri-Valley is able to kind of play that underdog role and defend their title as conference champs. So I think, aside from Tri-Valley, all four of the other teams in the conference should return their goalies from a season ago. And whether you've got a goalie that has a 1-5 goals against or a goalie that's got a 3-5 goals against, I think it's always nice having a guy and are familiar with and who's played at this level before and what he's capable of. Not sure what some others have coming in this season either. That obviously is yet to be determined as we're still a month away, but certainly worth noting when 4 of the 5 teams in the conference should have at least a steady presence in net. And on top of that, as many as 7 of the top 10 scorers from last season could all be back this winter as well, which unofficially official, it's true because I say it's true type of stat, the most returning scorers in a single conference year over year. I'm not so sure on that, but we're going to ride with it. If you want more on the Mid-Michigan Conference, like I said, complete standings projections on my Instagram account right now. You can go check those out. And then obviously if you go to the blog at pdspicks.com, the link is in the description as well. Got a ton more in detail on the Mid-Michigan Conference as well. Let's move on to the South Central Hockey League. I love this league, and I don't think it gets enough credit. Mattawan was on the fringe of the top 25 last season, kind of in that 22 to 27, 30-ish range. But really no one else in the league was north of 50 in the state rankings, according to my hockey rankings. Cap City was 36th, but they've opted out of the SCHL, and I believe will be independents for the upcoming season. I just think the perception from afar, if you're not familiar with this conference or these teams, you might look at them on the schedule or see them come up on the hub or state champs, and you'd be like, who? Huh? It's just another co-op of 5 or 6 schools, 6, 7 schools, whatever. But man, I'll be damned if these guys don't stun people around the state every year. And it's not just one team that does it. You know, Cap City in the league last year beat a top 10 team in Cranbrook, beat Hancock, beat Grand Rapids Catholic Central, took Stevenson to the wire in a 3-2 game, took Lakeland down to the wire in a 2-1 game. All those teams are perennials in the top 25, in the top bunch, that top group of high school hockey. And it wasn't just Cap City. You know, Mattawan beat Alpena, a top 25 team, tied Forest Hills Northern Eastern. We've seen that program do great things over the last 10 or so years. Almost beat Stevenson as well. Lost to them, I think, 6-5 or 5-4 in a high-scoring affair towards the end of last season. And then almost beat Granville in the playoffs as well. So Kalamazoo did beat Forest Hills Central in one of the biggest upsets in the 2025 playoffs last February. So if you factored in Cap City because they were in the league last year, the SCHL went 59-31-3 against non-league opponents last season. That's a 63.4% win percentage, which, again, unofficially official stats that I just made up, has got to be one of the best in the state comparative to other conferences. Winning your conference or your league is good, but how you perform in these non-conference matchups is a true testament, I think, for how you stack up on the statewide scale. And SCHL teams have obviously proved time and time again that they can compete. And you might ask yourself, well, why? You know, there are programs, you know, as a casual hockey fan, I'm not aware of them. I don't know of the East Sides and Portages of the world. Well, let me just tell you, it's because they are really, really good coaches in this league. You know, Ben Miller, a second-year coach for Mattawan, a former player at Western Michigan. He's got the Wildcats just playing the game the right way, playing hard, disciplined, structured. Drew Moffitt has been at Portage, you know, been the Portage head coach now for several years. He's another kind of chess player behind the bench, getting his guys to play sound hockey, manipulating matchups, and getting his guys to produce timely scoring. East Side, both Kalamazoo programs. These programs are sneaky, man. Sneaky good, and like I said, just doing it, quote-unquote, the right way. Mattawan is your defending champs here from a season ago. And again, my pick to win the league this winter as well. Only graduated 6 seniors last spring, but I'd argue they were the 6 most important to this team, so it is going to be a bit of a challenge here for the Wildcats. A lot of work to be done if Mattawan is to repeat as league champs, but you do have guys like Ben Eddington on the back end. Gavin Weish is a good place to start there too in net. He made 19 appearances in goal for Mattawan and put up a 14-4-1 record in those games, and a save percentage just north of 90%. So having that consistency in net can help settle the nerves throughout the rest of the lineup, I think. You know, you're looking to replace scoring. You're looking to develop some defensemen. Having a reliable goalie in net that you, again, know what you're going to get, I think gives you the ability to work through some of those other issues as long as you have that steady presence between the pipes there. And for Eddington, you know, this is a guy who's been a standout in the MDHL thus far in the fall. Was a tournament team kid for them last weekend on the 16U team that I believe went out to Minnesota. He had 9 goals and 19 points as a sophomore, and 2 goals and an assist in 6 MDHL league games this fall. So he's also a pretty dangerous scoring threat from the back end as well, capable of going end to end. It's not something I always want to see out of my defenseman, but the fact that he's capable of doing it and creating offense off the rush certainly makes him a weapon there for Mattawan. Portage is certainly going to be a problem in this league, though. You know, if you check out my players to watch on Instagram, in pdspicks.com, the Muskies have standouts at all three levels of the lineup. I got Ethan Rule up front, may have the best shot in the SCHL, super quick release. Now, you might say, if he's got such a nice shot, why did he only score 12 goals last year? And I'm glad you asked. I mentioned earlier, Portage, the style of game they play, it doesn't necessarily produce the stat stuffers like you might see elsewhere around the state. And that's okay. Caden Stashenko was a stud last year for the Muskies. And he was just over a point per game guy. Ethan Rule is kind of in that same category for me. Just plays the game the right way, does the little things, a guy that you just want in your lineup, period. You got him up front. You got Evan Kakabiki on the back end. He's a top defender for Portage and is just a junior still. You also got Lee Laporte in goal, a 4-year senior who's played in like 65 varsity games in his career with a career save percentage north of .930. That's an absolute weapon to have in the SCHL. I was crunching some numbers real quick. I was looking at some of the active scoring leaders and who's played most games and things like that. I mentioned Laporte and his 65 varsity games. That's second to only Cully Hayes for most games played by any active goalie in Michigan high school hockey. So a lot of experience there between the pipes and still another year to go. So if I was a betting man, which admittedly I am, I'd probably say Portage is the odds-on favorite to win just because of, like I said, some of those standouts that they got. But I'm not sure they've ever won this league either. So I'm going to stick with my initial pick of Mattawan to kind of repeat as champs here. But it's going to be a dogfight between those two. And don't sleep on Kalamazoo United either. People have been in my ear about KU for 2 years now. I mentioned it last year that KU was going to start climbing the league ranks there, that they were going to beat Kalamazoo in that big rivalry game, and they did not once but twice last year. I think they're going to continue that climb. Looking at, I think I said on last season's preview of the league, leading scorer Brady Penny is the real deal. A true goal scorer who back checks, plays defensive hockey, blocks shots, gets his teammates involved in the offense as well. I love that. Some of these guys who feel like they got to carry a team in order to have success end up playing selfish hockey, end up keeping the puck on their stick a little too long, forcing plays, getting into trouble. Penny is a guy who just flat out plays the game the right way. If I'm supposed to hit the guy on a breakout, I'm moving the puck to the half wall. If I'm supposed to kick it out to the wing and drive the net on a line rush, that's what I'm going to do. That's the kind of player Penny is. And if he can continue to bring the rest of that group along, KU could be really scary in the SCHL circles. I mentioned they beat Kalamazoo twice last year. They beat Portage, almost beat Eastside on 2 separate occasions. This is a team that's very much going to factor in to the SCHL equation there. Okay, let me take a break here. I haven't hardly paused to take a breath 20 minutes in. We'll wrap things up here with the Lakes Valley Conference out here in my neck of the woods, actually. South Lyon's home rink is just down the road from here. But a lot going on in the LVC. Last season's co-champ, Lakes area, has left the conference and joined the OAA, and I'll have that preview for you later this month. One of the schools in that co-op, I believe, joined the OAA in all sports. So the co-op hockey program got brought over as well in the mix. That's my understanding, at least, of what happened there. Additionally, the other half of the 2025 co-champ, Lakeland, some changes there as well, has co-opted with fellow LVC member Milford. They've joined, and I believe they're going to call themselves Milfland. Yeah, Milfland. A lot of happy hockey dads over there. I'm kidding. They're They're actually calling themselves the Huron Valley Titans, albeit I think my suggestion might, be a little bit better of a marketing opportunity there. So Lakes area, gone. Lakeland, co-opt. You're down to 4 teams for the in the upcoming season, making the LVC actually the smallest conference in high school hockey. But it's only going to last for a year because Stevenson, Livonia United, and Farmington United are all expected to join the LVC next season. All of those schools, my understanding again, have moved over from the KLAA across all sports. So the hockey program's obviously following suit there as well. This was one of the easier conference previews I've had to do this fall because last season's top forwards to watch, Nathan Dell, Nathan Leege, Austin Scanlon. This season's top forwards to watch, Nathan Dell, Nathan Leege, Austin Scanlon. These guys are talented forwards that I've liked for a while now. Both Dell and Scanlon were in the MDHL this fall. Leege has been a standout for the 18U split season team, the Michigan Steel. They're currently the top-ranked Tier 2 team in the state and number 4 in the country, last I looked on my hockey rankings. Now, those rankings, I believe, got updated today, and I haven't had a chance to take a look yet. But 14-2-0, the Michigan Steel's record so far, and Leege is their leading scorer with 14 goals and 27 points. I don't put a ton of stock into the Tier 2 circuit, as many of you may know if you've been listening to the podcast for a while now, but I do still think that's worth noting. And there are a couple Tier 2 programs that are going to be worth paying attention to this fall as we get closer to the state tournament later this month and kind of vying for a potential bid to nationals there later in March. So Dell and Scanlon helped lead Lakeland to at least a share of its 5th straight LVC title. You combine that duo and the Eagles' best with Milford's Mikey Yee and Craig Borges. This is a Huron Valley team that could go 3 lines deep in a way that no one else in the conference can. The Titans are going to be deep and dangerous with a high-end top line. That's going to be a very skilled power play unit, a very tough top line to defend against. That's a very good, call it a starting 5 like you would in basketball. But South Lyon's got more than just Leege, though, too. Like I gotta get into South Lyon here a little bit. Aiden Herrera on the back end is just the tip of the defensive spear that returns 5 from a season ago. That's a huge luxury there on the back end. SLU will have a really good group there on the back end, coupled with a top-level goal scorer in Leege. They aren't going to go quietly, and I expect them to give the favored Titans a really good run for that top spot in the LVC. Conference play, you're playing everybody twice. You just might have to sweep the other in a 2-game set to win an outright championship, because I don't know if either slips up against a Walled Lake or a Fenton Linden. So it's going to come down to those 2 big games between South Lyon and Huron Valley. And I do want to point out too, connecting with some of the coaches preseason and talking about upcoming schedules, players to watch, things like that. This is a great job by Coach Dennis Gagnon. The knowing the group he has coming back this winter, bolstering the strength of schedule, and really challenging his group here this winter. Listen to this. They've got Plymouth, Lumen Christi, Salem, Cranbrook, Livonia, Stevenson, all on the non-con slate. That is how you develop a program into a statewide contender and a real playoff threat. You got the talent, you got the horses, add some pieces to that lineup as well. Now you make a push for them with tough competition. And it's not about wins and losses. You know, you don't have to sweep your way through that list of non-conference opponents that I just mentioned to prove you're legit. You just got to win one or two and compete really, just even compete really well in defeat to show that you belong in that top 25-ish conversation. You know, I love that. So I think that's a bit of a mindset that I don't want to say is lacking, but like I don't know that the kids, the players, fully understand that yet. You know, I think as players and maybe even as coaches, we get so fixated on winning our conference, winning our league. And then when you have some of these non-conference matchups on a random Wednesday night or a Saturday afternoon and you're on the road in a long road trip or something like that, it's a little bit, it's easier to lose sight of, you know, the opponent or not quite fully get up for them the same way you would a cross conference rival on a big Friday night in front of a big crowd. To me, these non-conference matchups mean more than your conference matchups in a lot of ways, because that's how you really prove how you stack up around the state. Winning the league is great, but you know, if you talk to some of these top programs, your Brightons, your Heartlands, your Trentons, your Houghton back when they were still in the Great Lakes Conference, like they, yeah, the goal, you know, you want to win your conference, but ultimately you want to play the top 10 teams tough, the top 25 teams tough. That's where your bread is buttered. You know, Brighton went 5 or 6 years without winning a KLAA championship, and in that span, won multiple regional championships, won 2 state championships, I believe, and never won the KLAA in that stretch. Just to kind of put that in perspective a little bit. So I do think that's something, you know, talking with kids and coaches and things like that. I do, to a certain extent, you want to aim small, miss small, and you know, conquer your league first, and then you know, conquer your region, and then kind of climb the ladder that way. But for some of these kids who go into these non-conference games, like, who cares? It's South Lyon tonight. You know, it doesn't have any impact on the standings. We can't pick up any points, and things like that. Or, you know, we're all the way up in Traverse City, and these games don't count towards our standings. Like, it's a bad attitude or a mentality to get into. I'd treat them all like they matter, and every single one of these, you've got something to prove, especially in those non-conference matchups. Because if you do go up to Traverse City Central, or you do go over to Alpena, or you do go into the UP, and you beat some of these teams that aren't in your little pocket or area of the state, that's where you can really make your statements and really turn heads around the state and impress some people and begin climbing up the rankings there. So just kind of circle back to, like I said, Coach Gagnon's non-conference schedule here with South Lyon. I think this is absolutely fantastic to see. So would love to see more of that. I think your SCHLs do a great job with that. Mattawan had a great non-con last year. Portage, all those teams, like I said. So definitely something, like, as a coach, I love to see and would encourage more coaches and more programs to do. So, okay, just scratching the surface here with our conference previews leading up to the 2025-26 season. We got 10 more to go coming your way throughout the month. And I also got to drop in some independence talk too, because there's some really good programs on the independent circle now that I wouldn't get a chance to talk about because they're not in conferences anymore. Your Houghtons, Sault Ste. Marie's. I mentioned Cap City opting out of the SCHL. Those are some top-notch programs that I'll need to preview or tease leading up to the season. So maybe we have even a little independent section there where we get to talk about some of the standouts on that front. But be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube to stay up to date on all of these conversations. Check me out on Instagram as well for additional content, and visit pdspicks.com for even more high school hockey content. Sorry about that. DMs are open across all social medias. You want to reach out, you want to talk hockey, you want to drop some names, and kind of call your shot. I'm all for it. Love having those conversations. So don't be shy. Until next time, skate hard, have fun, and I'll see you at the rink soon.